All right, it is 8:24 here on Good Evening, and Christine has joined us in the studios to talk about art and music and everything in between for Monet Meets Debussy. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty well. It's been really chilly lately.
Do you think it's chilly or nice?
I think it's pretty chilly. Especially inside these days, I wear a fur coat because it's so cold.
Now, if it was, let's say, the winter time, I think it would feel kind of warm. It's been hovering in the, 20s still, so that's not too bad. But because it's already the end or middle of July, I think you just feel like something's not that right.
Yeah, but I think right now is the perfect weather for a show like yours where we can relax and,
Yeah, and I think this evening is actually very nice because it's a very cool summer evening, as it were, and it just sets the perfect tone for, kind of imagining art and talking about music. So what do you have for us?
Okay, so this cozy, chilly evening, we have something a little bit special. I want you to open up your ears as I take you down a grassy brook and show you the scene we'll be discussing tonight. A strip of water runs across a hollow surrounded by greens on either side. Wild bushes and branches from trees above teem with life, messy yet vibrant and beautiful. Below, growing from the water, are patches of mossy green and wild grass pointed upwards but tousled the way that you find them in nature. But unlike the vibrant, natural scene depicted, in the brook lies a young woman, pale and expressionless, resigned to her fate as her dress soaks up the water around her. Her eyes slanted down, her mouth half open, her arms out by her side with her palms faced forward like the branches of a tree. Yet somehow she looks even stiller than the trees above her. Around the greenery bordering her, we see white flowers. By her feet are roses, around her neck a string of violets, and from her right hand and down her side, there's a line of colored blossoms, daisies, poppies, and pansies floating down the stream. Her long hair, brown and ginger, envelops around her head. It's the same color as the willow tree above her that has fallen over to its side, mirroring her body. The thin, diagonal lines of the willow branches, with the small star-like shapes from its leaves, mimic the fine beading and embroidery in her silver gray dress.
That was a wonderful description of the painting that we're going to check out tonight. Very beautiful, but there are some words that you used in that description that make it seem a little bit dark. You said resigned to her fate. That is kind of ominous feeling. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
So our topic tonight is the English painter John Everett Millais and his work Ophelia from 1851. It's based on Shakespeare's early 17th century play Hamlet. And we've been looking at a lot of artists, either from France or active in Paris during the 19th century, people like the Impressionists. But tonight we'll be discussing the Impressionist English counterparts, the Pre-Raphaelites. So Ophelia is a beautiful pre-Raphaelite work of art. Like you said, it's beautiful, yet a little bit tragic. And it's become one of the defining images of this modern British movement and also Millais' oeuvre. And the themes found in this work were very common for the group who wanted to go back to art before the artist Raphael, which they believed were more honest and sincere. They liked to paint stunning scenes of nature and beautiful women, but their paintings often had a tinge of melancholy.
Well, this painting itself, Ophelia, is one that I can kind of get that vibe from. It's very realistic and almost, it has that ethereal sense to it. In fact, if our listeners want to go and see this for themselves, they can visit our Instagram. Just look up goodevening_BEFM, and we have a post of the painting. But I like this idea that the pre-Raphaelites are kind of like, whoa, I don't know where art is going. I'm going to just take it back a little bit to this more pure time. These paintings are very, very beautiful. So many rich colors and just kind of a lot of emotion conveyed there.
Yeah, and you're right about those colors. I heard what they like to do is they like to start the canvas with white paint on the background so that the colors on top of the white paint would pop and be a lot more vibrant.
Oh, okay.
So the tradition would be to start with a really dark base and then color and bring in light from above the black. But here they already have white coming almost like reflecting off of the canvas, the way you would see maybe like a digital screen today.
Yeah, and that really made all the colors pop, but also it really set this scene for Ophelia. When you look at it on its surface, you kind of get the sense that, it's like someone just kind of relaxing in nature. But there is much more kind of dark overtones on this. Not literally dark overtones, but, it's based from Hamlet, right?
Yeah, that's right. So Ophelia is a character in Hamlet, and her story is that she was infatuated with Hamlet, even though she was forbidden from meeting him by her father. But then later, Hamlet kills her father, and she's overcome with grief. So she loses herself and her mind. She falls into a small river while picking wildflowers, and then slowly sinks to her demise while singing to herself. She's completely lost her mind. And it is a heartbreaking ending to an innocent and romantic character. But the scene described in Hamlet is also strangely poetic. It's known to be one of the best poetic scenes describing death. So I have an excerpt from the play that I would like to read to you. It is from Act 4 when Queen Gertrude describes her death.
All right.
So she says, "There is a willow grows aslant a brook that shows his hoar leaves in the glassy stream. There with fantastic garlands did she come of crow flowers, nettles, daisies, and long purples, that liberal shepherds give a grosser name, but our cold maids to dead men's fingers call them. There on the pendant bough her coronet weeds, clambering to hang, an envious sliver broke, when down her weedy trophies and herself fell in the weeping brook. Her clothes spread wide and mermaid-like a while they bore her up, which time she chanted snatches of old tunes as one incapable of her own distress, or like a creature native and endued onto the element. But long it could not be till her garments heavy with their drink pulled the poor wretch from her melodious lay to muddy death."
Man, Shakespeare can really paint a picture with his words, and I'm sure that's what John Everett was actually thinking about when he was, just coming up with the concept. I mean, they mentioned similar flowers, daisies, purple, long purples, which, it definitely have in the painting. But that idea that her clothes are just kind of, floating there and not actually, it's not something that's very nice, so a little dirty, and it's something that'll eventually pull her down. It really does reflect in that painting.
It does, yeah. And I really like the way that he describes the water as glassy stream, or like the clothes you said, he says that they are heavy with their drink. So it really captures what's going on here. And I think Everett did a really good job of painting the scene that is described here. And so we see this list of the flowers that you mentioned that Shakespeare includes. He carefully picks these flowers because they have symbolic significance during that time.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, they've had a lot of cultural links to various meanings that continued on to Everett's time. In particular, the roses near Ophelia's cheek and dress and the field rose on the bank, they probably allude to her brother calling her the Rose of May.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that when you kind of look into it. There are other ones mentioned, though, like willows and nettles and daisies.
Yeah, and they actually symbolize forsaken love for willow, pain for nettle, and daisies symbolize innocence. And we have things like pansies that refer to love in vain, violets, which Ophelia is wearing around her neck, they stand for faithfulness, and chastity or death of the young. So all of these could apply to the scene going on here. And there's also a small bird that you see on the side, as well as other flowers that are in the painting that Everett actually chose because it describes the scene and actually this tragic story of Ophelia.
Okay, so, he didn't just kind of follow the template that Shakespeare laid out, but instead he took some of his own interpretations. I'm sure that he got an idea of the scene that Shakespeare painted, but then thought and really flushed it out, filled it up with some of his own ideas. And that's what makes him an amazing artist, but also this painting something more than just a kind of an interpretation of a work of writing. It's really its own wonderful piece of artwork.
Yeah, and I think it does, like you've been talking about how Shakespeare does a really beautiful job of painting the scene. And Everett as well, his painting is wonderfully accurate and real to nature, but it also has these symbolic meanings imbued into them the way that great literature might. And speaking of symbolism, let's also talk about her pose. It resembles that of a martyr, actually. She has these upwards gaze and open arms. Her eyes look very blank. And this pose is often used in Catholic liturgies. They're known as orans, which shows one's acceptance of God's will when they are facing death.
So they're the very classic image of the arms spread out and kind of ready to be accepted. But, it also got me thinking that when he's painting this, he's probably imagining Ophelia, what she was feeling and thinking, and that's how he was able to not only choose to pose her in that particular way, but you mentioned the expression on her face was, not, it's kind of blank, but still there's something there. And I don't know if it's contentment or, what it is, but there's definitely a mood that he's trying to pass on through her visual features.
Yeah, it's interesting. The more I studied the painting, the more I realized that she doesn't look, she's not really present. She's not really there. And everything that's around her, they're a lot more vibrant and beautiful, even though she conventionally looks beautiful. She, is also just half vacant from the scene. And I think that's what's so interesting about this idea of her being a martyr is that, the pre-Raphaelites, they like to often look at medieval artwork.
Okay.
And so this type of image of the palms facing forward, they were seen quite often in images of saints in medieval artwork. So she's almost become this symbolic figure. She's more than just the person herself. She is this innocent girl who, is facing grief. And I think she symbolizes much more than herself, actually. So, orans is also a symbolic gesture that often we see in the catacombs where female figures were drawn in this. And some people thought, oh, are these female priests? Because usually they're saints or priests who have orans. But actually, these female figures allude to the soul of the deceased, the soul that is now in heaven, and they're interceding for those who have remained on earth. So in some way, she is linking us to this world and the next.
Oh, she is the bridge. And also, the idea that if you're going to be a pre-Raphaelite, like you said, and you're going to draw nothing reading from modern sources, but look back into the past with medieval works, you're going to get a lot of those, just naturally religious overtones in all the works that you have. And it's not just going to paint or kind of affect the overall painting, but it's going to affect the source and the person and their mindset when they're doing this.
Yeah. And interestingly, in contrast to these symbolism, the nature around her, like I've been saying, it's a lot more vibrant, right? And the pre-Raphaelites were not interested in making ideal landscapes or romanticizing landscapes. So they really wanted to depict what they saw in front of them because they thought that, nature is unruly and delicate, and the wonder that comes from it is really important. So here you see Millais rendering nature, just as it is. And, he took painstaking detail with the way that he painted the natural environment around Ophelia. And this comes from months of sitting outdoors to make sure that he has a close-to-life depiction. So he, I think, is pointing us to more than just this overwhelming sense of grief and this idea of the next life or maybe what comes after death. But it seems that he is just looking back at nature. I thought a lot about grief and how we sometimes submerge ourselves into our inner turmoil. But here Millais is pointing us outwards towards nature. And nature really helps us celebrate the source of life that surrounds us. Nature persists, it's really resilient, and it celebrates life in its abundance and variety. So we can learn and see and feel so much from the world around us and come to appreciate the beauty of fleeting and delicate life around us.
Well, he does a wonderful job. And if you go and look at this painting, you're going to note that it is really beautiful. Just the surroundings. I wonder where he went to sit there for hours. It seems like it'd be a very peaceful place in general, just all the wildflowers and the life. And of course, he's by a stream or by a brook. So there's that natural movement there. But when he kind of made this painting, he also represented kind of a stillness that is found, even though there's all this activity in life. He really had it kind of captured, almost like a picture, this stillness that is rarely found in nature.
That's right.
So this is just one of those amazing paintings. I'm glad that you were able to bring it to us today. I hope that we can explore more of these pre-Raphaelites. I'd never even heard of that before. So thank you for bringing that on, and we'll see you back here next week.